to Power Producers Shop Talk, where we are refining and redefining the sales game by equipping you with the tools you need to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Listening to the podcast is only going to get you so far. Why not take your game to the next level? Check out Power Producer Basecamp on killingcommercial.com today.
Tactical skills that'll help you provide deliverable value to your clients and prospects.
Want to have the sweet swag that we send out from the Power Producers podcast for your clients and employees? Check out policyt.com today.
And action items that you can provide to take your prospects and clients to the next level.
Want to create an online presence but don't know how to start? Check out crushingcontent.com. It's done for you, so all you have to do is show up.
This is Power Producers Shop Talk, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Okay.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Shop Talk, and we are continuing our series today on Becoming the Protege, Season 3. My guest is Mr. Brian Shaw, the principal at Alamo Insurance Professionals in the great state of Texas. We've already talked to Sam Lorenz. We've already talked to Mr. Hotel Joe Hollier, and you heard from Lloyd Brown last week. And I think this is the last one where I'm going to recap everybody, because by the time I get to number 9, I'm not going to be able to remember them all in order. But I just wanted to take a minute to welcome Brian to the podcast and just have him tell a little bit about himself before I start peppering him with questions about Protege. Brian, what's going on, man?
Not much. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be one of 9 for the Protege Season 3.
Yeah, so tell everybody a little bit about your background. I know you got into it in your submission video, but not everybody who listens to the podcast maybe has caught that.
Okay. Well, I'll go back, seeing that I have a little bit of a long tooth in age. I'll go back a little ways. And
You and me both, brother.
Out of high school, I went into the service, served 5 years active duty in the U.S. Army as a military policeman.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I got out 3 weeks before Saddam invaded Kuwait.
Oh, geez.
So a little bit of a luck of the draw there. I wouldn't have been opposed to still being serving, but that's just how things happen. Got out, met my wife. My wife and I actually went to high school together, but never dated. Met her. We got married, started having a family, and I worked for a sheriff's department. And went back to school full time and worked full time and went to school full time, got my degree. When I got done with that, I went to work for Prudential. So I got my base and training in insurance financial services there, did that for about 15, 18 years, got out of that I was pretty much in the securities industry, Series 7, 24, 66. Got out of that, started a medical device company. Worked with surgeons in the OR, built that from scratch from zero to about 15 docs. Pretty good revenue. And then COVID hit, and I spent 46 days in the hospital with COVID. Got out, was on oxygen for about 8 months, and that's kind of in the here and now, out of mind, out of sight business. And I lost my contracts and decided to go back into insurance and financial services. Then I decided, nope, don't want to do that. I just want to strictly do commercial insurance. So that's where we're at now. And my son just came to me about a year and a half ago and said, I want to do that. I think talked about it, got him studying, got him licensed, and now he's working with me and training with me on that. So that's where we're at.
Good deal. So talk a little bit about the agency. How old is it now? And is there anything that you guys specialize in?
Agency is a little over 2 years old. I have one sub producer besides my son. He kind of is a generalist. My son and I are trying to focus on construction and niche down into HVAC, electrical and plumbing, along with agriculture. I have a very strong agricultural background. I grew up on a big farm in Indiana, was in 4-H, FFA. My kids were in 4-H and FFA, and now my grandchildren are starting into 4-H and FFA. My oldest granddaughter is showing rabbits and sheep this year. So,
no kidding. That's pretty cool. The agricultural piece is interesting, and honestly, there's a lot of opportunity there from the insurance standpoint, um, as well. So lean into that because there's not a lot of people who do that well, to be honest with you. Just
Right.
based on my experience and what I've written there. Going back a few years now, I don't mess with it much at all anymore. I still have a couple of legacy feed mills that I wrote years ago that are in my book that have followed me. But why the protege, man? Why'd you throw your hat in the ring?
I'm running in quicksand, to be just brutally honest.
The hamster wheel,
Um,
brother.
it's
Sadly,
it's
that's how it is.
if I was 20 years younger, I don't know that I would have, but I probably should have then. But I just didn't know that. But now I know I need this. I've tried to find it's just been kind of difficult to manage and grow the agency and train my son at the same time. I'm a salesperson, not necessarily a trainer. So I need the discipline and the systems that are set up in killing commercial insurance to help move us forward, move him forward, to show him the proper way to do this, not the bad habits that I have created over 20 years in the industry. That not only am I trying to fix those in myself, but I'm trying to not let them seep into him and move him forward in the correct way.
Understood. So what are you looking most forward to? I mean, I'm assuming you've gone back. You told me, I saw it on Messenger yesterday or the day before that you basically immersed yourself in past seasons and everything, which, I'm glad you got to watch them because there's actually a lot of good education in those. They have literally no bearing on what you're about to go through now because you never know if I'm going to do it the same or make it completely different or some combination thereof. But what are you looking forward to gaining from this? I understand the framework and the discipline and the accountability, but is there anything specific that you think you're going to gain from being part of this that's going to just really drive the needle for you in a way that it otherwise wouldn't?
Really, I anticipate that what we'll gain from this is this will make our agency stand out as the agency for those niches that we were in, based off of the processes and not just a policy peddler, but an actual risk manager and a I can't think of the word right now, but just a co-worker with the business owner in their risk management and making sure we're driving to where they're taken care of, not just with policy, or excuse me, with insurance policies, but an overall comprehensive policy for the company to drive them to get the best cost for them.
100%. You're going to hear from a good one who did that himself on season 1 this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Derek Hayden, I mean, just absolutely crushed it when he was on. And um, I think that it's going to be really good learning experience for everybody who gets to hear him talk for a little bit here shortly. But talk a little bit about the what it's like working with your son, man. I mean, I know a little bit about that.
Um, it's really it's good, it's frustrating, and it's exciting all at the same time. Um, he's a I call him a kid. He's 31 years old, so he's not a kid, but he's my kid, so he'll always be a kid. Um, he's had a tough go of it. He was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic at 2 years old.
Mm.
So he's had that all of his life. He's dealt with. When he was about 6 or 7, he was diagnosed on the Asperger's autism spectrum. So he's had a rough go of it through challenges through school, not only with the Asperger's but the diabetes, and just he does what has the biggest heart in the world that you ever see. He'll befriend anyone, even if they're mean to him. And it's sometimes, but getting his focus is where I struggle. And I really think that's why this system, this process will help me help him. It will make me more laser focused, which in turn he will see that and he can emulate that. And I'll have a system that he can copy and follow. So it gets frustrating. It was very frustrating getting him licensed. He would study, but he wouldn't immerse himself in it, and he would take the test and he'd miss it by 1 or 2 points.
Mm.
Then he would study, and I'd say, okay, well, if you don't want to do this, that's fine. No, no, I want to do it. And so then he would get it, and then he finally passed it. And he retains. I mean, he's like a sponge, right? You go ask him now things that he took on the test, he'll tell you exactly what it was. And I would quiz him before the exams, and I mean, he was, but then he would go take the exam, and so he's not a good exam taker with that.
That's all right.
So
He's in good company, man.
yeah, the exciting part is being able to have something in place to help watch him grow, that I can pass this on to him as a legacy. I don't know that I'll ever retire, may slow down, but I don't know that in being in this business, I'll ever retire, to always be there for him, to where then at some point he'll be able to step into the overall agency management role, not have to produce, but just kind of keep track of the producers and keep the agency up and running, following this system.
So I'm interested. You may or may not know this about me, but my youngest son has some pretty significant developmental disabilities. Autism is one of them, but he also has cerebral palsy and agenesis of the corpus callosum in his brain, and perioventricular leukomalacia, which is low white brain matter, which was its a whole own set of issues, because your body produces white brain matter prenatally and doesn't after that. So when you're diagnosed with it, you're either going to be okay, or you have progressive white brain disease, which is 100% fatal. So we were having issues with him when he was a baby for keeping food down, and we thought it was a gastro issue and everything else. And we ended up taking him to the hospital one weekend to go get scoped, because I shouldn't say taking him to the hospital. We went to the hospital because that's where they were doing the procedure, and to get an endoscopy and everything. And the pediatric gastroenterologist came out and she said, I want to go ahead and admit him. Every specialist we need to figure out what's going on is actually on staff. I looked at the schedule, and as long as you're okay with it, we want to put him in and run tests this weekend to see if we can figure out really what's going on. This whole thing looked clear. And so we had gone planning on maybe being there for a couple of hours. I left my wife and went home to pack suitcases and make arrangements for the two older boys, so that we could be with Ethan for the weekend and stay at the hospital and sleep there and everything. And so as I'm pulling back in, I realize, as I'm retracing where I went to get there, that I'm pulling into the pediatric cancer unit, and was not overly happy about that. It sort of freaked me out. And what we ended up finding during that time was that he had the cerebral palsy and the other stuff, but the low weight brain matter is what ended up being one of the things that was diagnosed. And the issue that you have there, he was 18 months old at the time. The issue you have there is the only way to know whether or not that's actually progressive white brain disease is they get the MRI, and then you wait 18 months and they do another one. And if it's reduced, then they have progressive white brain disease. And if that hasn't, then he's probably going to be okay. So for like 18 months, we're living not knowing whether our 18-month-old child's going to live to see 10 years old or not. And it was a really tough time for us. But Ethan is not, he'll never be able to be self-sufficient. He's incredibly intelligent in ways you would never expect. Like, we'll be at a red light and he's on his tablet in the back of the car talking about up-to-date sports scores, but he doesn't have a data plan. He figured out how to get on a public Wi-Fi at one of the businesses that's directly around where the red light is or whatever. And so, it's always interesting to me, because as we've gone through all of the things that we've had to do to fight the school system and everything else, it's tough because he's so pickin' social, man. Like, his social scores are through the roof. And if you were to be around him for, 15 minutes, you would think nothing different. There was nothing different about him. If you're around him for an hour, you'll be ready to give him back. I can promise, because of all of the stuff that's going to come in that hour. But, knowing what my background is, and having a son who not necessarily has Asperger's, but is autistic by diagnosis. It's interesting to me that your son is in the industry as a producer, because there's so many different ways that people with autism are perceived, but also how they interact with others. How does he handle the social part? He's perfectly fine with it. There's no reservations. I mean, talk a little bit about that, because I think this is something, honestly, just between the two of us and the other 50,000 people that are listening right now. But the reality is, this is a platform that can bring awareness to so much more than just insurance. And I think this is actually something really good that people need to hear, because we discount people's abilities based on a diagnosis instead of pushing them to be the absolute most that they can be. And while I understand that my son will never be self-sufficient, he doesn't get a free pass in life. I want him to work up to the potential that he has, so that he can at
Exactly.
least maximize that. So talk a little bit about that, because there may be people out there with Asperger's listening to this, or with children or family members. And I mean, I think it's really cool that he's in the industry and y'all are able to work together. And I know that, there's certainly frustrations that come with that, but how does he do on a daily basis? How does he manage it?
Well, that's the frustrating part. Um, to just have a normal conversation with someone, he's perfectly fine. When it comes to doing walk-ins, phone calls, he stutters and stammers. He doesn't get it. And I tell him, precise, to the point. This is what you want to ask. This is what you want to say. This is what you want to do. And so we're working on that. One of the things I want to do with him will probably start in the first quarter is I want to get him signed up with the Toastmasters group to go and get him away from dad.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's the issue. It's the father-son dynamic, and
It's tough, man.
get him
It really is.
Yeah, because I mean, and my kids have told me this. I have an older son and a daughter, and I had to learn this from my kids. Just because they're not doing it the way I want it done doesn't mean it's not getting done and it's not done correctly. I'm a real over. That's why I'm not a good trainer, because I'm a real over. You tell me, okay, Brian, this is what you got to do. You go do this, and I mean, I'm like that, right
Well,
on it.
that's the military training, man. I mean, is what that is.
Well, and growing up on a farm. I mean, a
Yeah.
farm kid. I mean, I grew up on a farm. In high school, I was up at 5 a.m. taking care of feeding the hogs, taking care of the chores. At school at 6 for basketball practice. After school for an hour and a half, 2 hours for basketball practice. Home, take care of the chores, go do homework, and in bed. I mean, it was just, that's what we had to do. Springtime, we were up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would call the dean of students and say, "Hey, Mr. Jackson, we're planting. When it rains, I'll be back to school." "Okay, fine, don't worry about it." And I'd be gone for 2.5 weeks and have one day as absent. Put all my homework. I do homework in the tractor while I was doing all that. So it's just part of that you grow up with. And it was really difficult on me, because when the Asperger's part wasn't as difficult as the diabetes diagnosis was. I mean, when your 2-year-old child begs you not to give them a shot because it hurts, but you can't not do that because it's a matter of life or death, or you get woken up in the middle of the night by your older child that because your son's having an insulin reaction, he's having convulsions and hallucinations. I mean, it's just really tough. So in a kind of a way, I pampered him a little bit on that, but I always tried to make him responsible. Is like, if you do it this way and you do it right the first time, it's done. Dad won't come back, and excuse my language, being your ass about not doing it right. Because and if I come back and I get in you like that, it's because you didn't do it correctly. And that's where they kind of came in finally and said, we're doing it. It's done. We just didn't do it the way you wanted to do. So they kind of taught me something as a father. And that's where we have that dynamic now, he and I, a little bit that gets frustrating, is because I want him to charge through and go like I do, but he's not capable of that. That's just not him. So it's learning his way. And sometimes now he'll go work with the sub producer and they do phenomenal together. So sometimes it's just the dad-son dynamic where, if you call him and you tell him what to do, he'll come to me and say, David said I need to do this, 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 and this. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, I just told you that yesterday, but you won't do it because Dad told you, but you'll do it because David did. So it's
And
just the
how you
dynamic of
react to
growing.
that is extremely important, because
Exactly.
you can't get upset or offended or irritated, and that's one of the things that I've learned. I'd rather them self-discover or figure, and like, not that I'm going to set them up to fail, but I'm going to let them flounder a little bit if I need to. And I want them to have other
Right.
resources. I want them to build their own network. I won't ever have quality of life as I continue to age if I always have to be tied to the business, because everything is under my control and purveyance at that point. So, I just think I think it's interesting, and I appreciate you sharing the story, number one, and disclosing that, but number two, going into detail, because I do think it's something that's important that be talked about. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and what your experience is with having the child who has medical issues and in a neurological diagnosis is completely different than what my experience is going to be, even though there may be some level of overlap there. But the problem is that too many people, in my opinion, aren't open and discuss those things, and they don't share how they've been able to deal with it. And that's really a shame, because there's a lot of people out there that need that lifeline or that resource, and they don't have it. And I mean, I learned a lot. I'm fortunate. We talk about it all the time. Ethan could not have been born to better parents for what he deals with, because my wife has worked with people who have developmental disabilities her entire career. She's a speech language pathologist who works has for the last 20 years at a company that manufactures augmentative communication devices for people who have the cognitive ability to speak but are nonverbal for one reason or another. And she's actually the one, she like knew there's something that was left to center with Ethan almost right out of the box when he was a kid. And we took him to the
Right.
pediatrician, and he, believe it or not, same pediatrician that I went to when I was a kid. And he did diagnose the way they did. Oh, he's just going to grow out of it. It's just a little bit behind whatever else. And she's like, I don't think so. I think there's more to this. Thank God she didn't take him at face value, and she went and got another opinion. And that's how we ended up going down the road we did. But what really became evident to me was the lack of advocacy for these people when you get into the school system. And so with Ethan
Oh, nightmare.
specifically,
Nightmare.
yeah, with Ethan specifically, part of the issue, we don't have the greatest medical environment in Tampa, or Florida for that matter. That's why you see so many people that are from New York fly back to New York for their health care. It's a very litigious state that we're in, and there's a lot of malpractice suits that are probably not justified. And as a result of that, we don't typically get the best talent attracted. I'm not saying everybody's untalented. I just think we're not getting the best talent possible. And when you have a child who's diagnosed like that, you do whatever you have to do to be their advocate, because they can't fend for themselves. And I mean, we spent well into six figures out of pocket to fly him back and forth on a monthly basis to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, because they're the #1 pediatric neurology hospital in the country. We went from having 3 pediatric neurologists in the entire Tampa Bay area to going to a hospital where they had something like 57, and every single one of them had a very specific specialty. So we knew that we were going to get what we needed. But my wife is the one who had the foresight, and her experience told her, we need to do this, and we need to push the envelope now, because if we don't have a formal diagnosis for him, he's never going to get the resources he needs from the educational system. You have to have that stuff. And I mean,
Right.
we go to these IEP meetings, and I just sit there shaking my head like, how in the world do you people ever get anything done in life? It's all a massive bureaucracy. And the one lady, I've been in front of the school board multiple times, and the one lady told me, she said, you ought to just consider running for the school board. I said, lady, you need to be careful what you wish for. That would be your worst nightmare if I actually, came in there, because I'm not going to settle for this mediocrity. These kids need somebody to advocate for them. And the other thing that struck me really more than anything else was not just that, but there's so many more that have nobody, that the parents
No,
aren't going to
no.
put the effort in. They don't know how to
Or
navigate
they don't know
the
how
system.
to. They don't know how to.
They don't know how
Yeah.
to. They don't have the
Yeah.
money to hire like, one of the things we ended up having to do is we got so contentious in the one IEP meeting, we just went out and hired a professional to come in, and that's all this lady did. She was actually a retired lieutenant colonel from the military, and she went in and whipped their rear end into shape in a hurry. But that's what she did. She goes in and negotiates IEPs for families that aren't getting anywhere with the school system. And I told my wife, I don't care how much it costs. We need a hired gun. Let's make this happen. But it's crazy to think that the welfare of that child, understandably, it's our job to raise our kids the right way. It's our job to advocate for them. But to know how many parents just don't have any idea how to go through that whole system, and the fact that the school systems know that and take advantage of it, drives me absolutely insane.
Yeah. And they get funding for those IEP plans. You would think they would be all over those. I mean, I know the nightmare. My wife and I were at lunch one day when we lived in Colorado, and we get a phone call, and it's Child Protective Services, and they had gone into the school and seized our children because the school nurse called them and told them that we were medically neglecting Connor because she wouldn't follow the IEP plan
Hmm.
and his blood sugars. So we immediately got an attorney and called the Barbara Davis Center. That's like the world renowned. You ever seen the books that have the Pink Panther on it for the juvenile diabetes? The guy that wrote that is a doctor there. And we called the doctor, and he got us with the caseworker, and they just lit into the school. We had a voice recording of the nurse calling us, telling us his blood sugar was high, and she just didn't know what to do. A licensed, registered nurse. She would call and say, his blood sugar is this. I'd say, okay, what have you done? Well, I called you. Okay, where is that at on the steps to follow for a high blood sugar? Well, it's the last thing. So you went from skipping everything else to the last thing, and you called me. What does the first thing say to do? Verify with a finger prick. Did you do that? Well, no. I mean, we had to sue the school corporation. And I mean, I understand. And now, our granddaughter, one of our granddaughters, in October of last year, she became type 1 diabetic. So now my son and his wife are going through this whole process with the school, and I go with them when they have the IEP plans. And when we first went in, after she got out of the hospital and went back in, and they started saying, well, and looked at them. I said, y'all just need to stop right now, because you're not talking to people that don't know what's going on. I went through 12 years of school with this child's uncle, fighting the bureaucracy of a school system. I was like, you will have someone in place trained for her. You will have them trained on everything, and you will have a backup. We're not going to say, well, maybe. No, you will do it. You're not going to rely on us. You, by law, have to have that. And it's been pretty smooth sailing once I set the tone of, hey, we're not going to mess with this.
Yeah, we didn't need the hired gun more than one time. Once that was over, they didn't want to see her come back again. But I mean, that's why it's so important to get all of that stuff into the IEP and make sure it's written. Like there's all kinds of tricks with the language to make sure that it's written the right way. And honestly, it was a huge eye opener and educator for me to go in and just be part of that process, because if he was reliant on me solely, he'd be in big trouble. Like there's just, I'm not equipped to do that. I could, but there would be a learning curve, but thank God my wife was there. But I think that speaks volumes, man, because it gives you a very solid why as to why you're doing what you're doing, why you want to build the business. You could have gone and just been an employee for somebody else, or a 1099 producer for somebody else. But the fact that you're able to hang your own shingle out and bring your son in and give him a place where, he can hopefully thrive, that's part of the protective nature of being a dad too, right? I've got my oldest son and my middle son are both at the agency with me every single day. And that's not by my design. I mean, obviously, I hired them and said, yes, I'll give you a job, but they self-selected to come do this. And, with Grayson, for example, who's doing extremely well in the industry, he came to me originally and I told him, you need to go work at Publix for 2 years. You need to go work at a grocery store and understand how to deal with people. And, at their absolute worst, and if you have any luck at all, they'll give you the opportunity to work in one of the perishable departments. I highly recommend you do that because you can learn about how profitability affects the operation and all of this stuff. And I said, I realize it doesn't mean anything to you right now, but it'll be invaluable experience for you when you actually get into doing what you're doing, because you're going to know customer service, you're going to understand profitability and a bunch of other things. And that's exactly what he did. And and the other thing is, he's very thankful for the fact he doesn't have to work in the grocery industry anymore now that he comes to work every day. But, I didn't push my kids to do this. And I think there's a lot of people out there who do. And then it doesn't work the way that it should, because that dynamic's not there. And I think the other thing that's a contributor, and you already alluded to this, is it's really tough to separate the father from the leader in the agency. Because
Yeah.
I can tell you, I was a partner in an agency with my dad and another person directly prior to launching Florida Risk, and I found out really quickly that I was never going to be viewed as anything more than the 10 to 12-year-old kid throwing the tennis ball up against the garage door. And I can't operate in that environment. I am not wired to work for somebody else. I can work with people if I've got people at the same level, but I'm entrepreneurial, and I tend to look at every single issue completely different than what the traditional agency principal might. And especially in that relationship, they were both very conservative risk managers by background. We're exactly the opposite in that case. And it was like oil and vinegar, man. And I decided the best thing for, the relationship with my dad would be for me to leave and do my own thing. And that didn't come without its own set of bumps and bruises. But at the end of the day, we're back on track as best we can be. And I think I've done okay for myself since I left, and they did okay without me. And that's probably how it should have been from the beginning. But it took us a while to get there. And so I take those lessons and what I learned that I didn't want to have happen to me, and I consciously make sure that those aren't things that I'm doing to my kids when they're in the agency. Because like they're 23 and 19 respectively, but they're still my kids, and they always will be. So
Right.
I
Right.
treat them that way. But I think it's really, really cool for you that you've been able to put yourself in a position where you could open the firm and do it in a way that you could do it in tandem with your son and give him a place where he feels safe and can, express who he is, but, do it in a way that's going to allow him to make a reasonable living and probably a life for himself that he might not get anywhere else.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's kind of it's kind of neat, some of the similarities that I'm noticing. He actually works for a grocery store now part time,
Huh.
in the seafood department, so he can have his health insurance.
Yep.
So I mean, he's doing both jobs, and he's been in that position about 8 months, and that position has helped him. I can see where because he is customer interacting. Yeah, where before he was on night shift, and that's where we really had a lot of struggle with him being on night shift and doing this. And I would just kept telling him, like, you got to get on a day shift. You can't do this and be on night shift. It just doesn't work that well. So it's coming around. And again, he's super intelligent. I call him the king, or this encyclopedia of irrelevant information. He will just spout off some random fact about something that no one would think about, and he's right all the time. So I mean, he's
You need to get him
super
on
intelligent.
Jeopardy, man.
I know. So it's just he's got the intelligence to do this. It's just me disciplining myself to then get the systems in place for him to show him that discipline, and I know he'll thrive and take off with it. He may not be the best salesperson, but I think if he follows the process and the way we want to have this set up, he won't have to be a salesperson. He'll get it through in the knowledge and in the difference that agency is for that client.
Yeah, he doesn't need to be a seller. He needs to be an educator, honestly. And I mean, that's
Yeah.
probably something he could do very well with. Because I mean, I think that a lot of autistic people have a massive upside on the creative side of things.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know if he's that way or not, but I mean, from a marketing standpoint and just creating value proposition material and things like that, he could probably be a huge asset to you because it's not necessarily client facing, and it gives him the ability to and freedom to do some things that he might not otherwise have the ability and freedom to do. So here's my next question about Protege, because we got off on a tangent, but it's one that we needed to, and I appreciate you being open and sharing that stuff, because I do know that there are people listening to this that are going through exactly the same thing, or at least very closely. But I've asked everybody the same thing. Obviously you all think you're going to win, which is awesome, but there's a 90% chance you're not. Only one person wins in the end. And so my question to you is, who would you say you're most concerned about in terms of the competition?
Myself.
Oh, that's a good answer. I knew you were going to say that, though. I knew it as soon as I asked it. He's going to say himself.
Myself. I do not want to let Connor down and my family down.
Well, here's what I know, man. This is what I know, and I'm gonna put you at ease a little bit, not because I want you to take the foot off the gas pedal at all, and I don't think you would anyhow. But you're not gonna let them down no matter how you fare in the competition, because what you get just by being part of this, and I've tried to articulate that to everybody, and you'll get it. I mean, you're going to figure it out as you start going through, these special mentor calls that I set up for this season, but then get into the challenges and everything else. Everybody's around for 10 shows, man, regardless, whether you're the ultimate winner or not. Everybody's going to be around for, the 10 or 12 shows that we have, and participate in all of the mentor calls that they're able to be on and all of that stuff. And so the only way that you could let yourself and your family and Connor down would be not to take advantage of all of that stuff at 100%. Take the fact of winning and throw it out the window. Focus on getting the most out of the experience, and the winning stuff takes care of itself. I hope you guys make it brutally difficult on me, but experience tells me that's not gonna be the case. I think that everybody starts out full of piss and vinegar and ready to run with it. But when we start putting the challenges down and they start getting the feedback and they start letting thoughts creep into their head and everything else, they start to withdraw from it. So if I were giving you advice and a tip, and I've given a tip to every single person that I've interviewed so far, don't let yourself rent space in your head free of rent. Okay, you can't get caught up in the fact that it's a competition, because at the end of the day, yes, it is, but every single thing you're doing is directly applicable to the growth of your agency and the growth of your book of business right now. That's what makes it so cool. This isn't fictitious. This is real. And the guy that you're going to hear from at 3:00 is going to walk you through the exact process he built that allowed him to win season 1, that he's still using to win today. So that's where the real victory comes from. Yeah, getting into Killing Commercial would be great, and getting the recognition of winning the competition would be great. And I hope everybody, takes it that seriously. But the reality is, the real victory comes from the process, and everybody's a winner that's willing to invest in themselves there. And that's what I would tell you. Don't let it get in your head, because when we start throwing challenges around, they're not necessarily going to be easy. And, I think we do a really good job of editing, and I make sure of that, because one of the things I've told everybody is, I'm not going to make you look bad publicly. I'm going to give you feedback, and if I have to let you go, I'm obviously going to have to do that and explain why, but I'm never going to make you look bad or paint you in a negative light. What I am going to do is give you very direct feedback on the unedited recording that I provide to you after I go through your work product every week, and say, these are the things you should have done better. Here's where I talked about these and you missed them in different conversations that we've had. And, this is why I'm going to have to make the decision this week or whatever else. But I'm going to treat this as if you're one of my team members in my agency, because I owe that to you for putting yourself out there. So, you've already won, man, by being in the top 9, because you're going to get a level of attention and access to people that honestly a lot of you guys would not ever have access to be able to pick their brain, learn from them, find out what they've done to win, see what they haven't done well that's cost them, and then not replicate that stuff. So that would be my advice. this is such a psychological game, and I feel like you're probably programmed okay for it with your military experience and law enforcement experience. You have to learn to compartmentalize that emotion. I just hope you don't leave it compartmentalized so long that it starts eating at you, because that's where I see people start getting left to center.
Yeah, my biggest thing is what happens is I start in it's in, I think it's kind of industry wide, and I've noticed it myself, and I really focus on not doing it is when I start in doing something and it starts working, then I try and figure, oh well, maybe if I twitch it here, twitch it there, it'll work better. And I just need to stop that. Or I have stopped that. I still, but I try to stop that and just continue to drive on right with what I'm doing. Don't tweak it. Don't do anything with it. It's working. Leave it alone and do it. Just do it every day.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I mean, in Killing Commercial, when I'm doing coaching calls with people, it's, a lot of times it's after they went in and they did, like, I prep them beforehand, but then they recap with me after, and they didn't get a deal or whatever, and I'll say, walk me through exactly. And every single time it's exactly what you just said. Instead of listening to the advice that I gave them, and it's not that I know everything. I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but I've been around the block at this point. I know what it takes to get the deals done, and I'll lay it out for them. But then they always want to tweak it, their own way, one way or the other. And I'm like, that's where it fell off the rails. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't need to do that. You just need to listen to what I told you and follow that direction, because that's how you would have gotten the deal done. But that's interesting to hear you say that. So we're about ready to wrap up, because I got to get caught up on email and stuff before our next call. But anything that you haven't gotten out that you want to get out before I let you go?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm ready for the challenge, and I'm confident. I understand my shortcomings. I know where they are at. I've identified them. I have them written down. Just need to make sure that every time one of those starts to maneuver in, I check it and not let it creep in, and just, stay the ground, and just continue moving. That's why I watched both seasons, just to see, and understanding that the challenges will probably be different, but I think there'll be some similarities in some of it too. So one of the things that I pulled out of it, you've already mentioned it, is a lot of the critiques were you asked for something specific and they didn't give all of it. They didn't do all of it. And I mean, that's some things I noticed in some of them. It was like you asked for three things and they did two, or they did one, and that it just didn't feel complete when they just did the one. And that's just one of the things I really want to make sure I'm hyper focused on, is within the challenge, what you asked for. I checked off each box of what you asked for when I complete the challenge.
Yeah, because you're not hurting me if you don't do it. You're hurting yourself, and not just in the
Right.
competition, but if you don't do it the way I lay it out for you in the real world, it's not going to work the way it should either. So that's good intel, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to chat with me today, and I look forward. We're going to be talking again in another 15 minutes, anyhow. But just look forward to watching you progress through it. I wish you the best. I truly do. I've told everybody the same thing. You are number 4 out of 4 today. So I'm almost halfway through all of the contestants, and I still have the coaches to do too on their teams. But, I've told everybody it's like I've got 9 kids right now. Everyone has their own quirks,
Yeah.
their own idiosyncrasies. I love every one of them equally. No, none more, none less. And I truly do hope everybody has the best experience possible, because that's what I've promised you. And I feel like every single person in the top 9 has a chance to win. That's why they're there. And who comes out on top, we'll see. But like I told you already, everybody's already won by being in the finals to
Yeah.
begin with. So
Well, one thing I do every day when I get up, since I've gotten into this challenge, I would do it before, but I've done it every day. This is the first thing I do when I look in the mirror, is I repeat to myself my most favorite quote ever from Larry Bird, who's playing for second.
yep, there you go. I know, I've seen you post it, man. I see you post it, and I love it. It's going to get spicy for sure. So listen, I hope you have a great weekend. I'll catch you in 15. Everybody else, we're going to see you next time. And I don't know who's next, because I only knew the 4 today. And I already said I'm not going to try and memorize all 9 in order. So we'll catch you guys next time. See